Hello and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a weekly book club podcast where we do some Dungeons and Dragons and discuss how they do, how we put them into our role-playing campaigns. Hamilton just did a Fiona, and you've never done that before, where you're doing interpretive dance. And you know what? I appreciate it for putting me off. I didn't realize how off-putting it was. Hello, Hamilton. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. I'm good. All the better for that. Yeah, very good to be here. We
Yeah.
kind of actually, I was thinking, should it have been introduced as the travel book club?
Oh, it could have
Potentially.
been. Yeah, we've been all up and down the Sword Coast for doing bits and pieces because we've done
We
obviously
have.
our Baldur's Gate primer. We've done the water deep. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Or the water deep dragon heist. That was four words in
or
one,
whatever it
wasn't
was
it?
called, or some weird
Yeah,
name.
the primer. Yeah. With the Volo's guide. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Minks and Booze. Yeah, which
Journal
had lots
Villainy
of
as
other
well.
places. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should actually, there is another one. We should look at like some of the, I know it's going to, well, actually, we can wait until the campaign guide comes out for the Forgotten Realms, but
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
do own Volo's Guide to the North from TUI, which
Oh, you
includes like
do?
Luskan and others. I can't remember what the other ones are.
I see where your priorities lie when you do
Yeah,
your
well, that's why I bought it. Was for Luskan, and that was it. Yeah.
when you were doing your Forgotten Realms geography. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But we are traveling today, aren't we, Fiona?
We
but
are
where are we traveling?
Well, hope you've got your coat, and I hope you've got
Yes.
your mittens and whatnot. Because today, friends, we're going north. We are going to Icewind Dale. And
Yes.
today we're looking at the 10 towns, which are we're mostly looking at them from the book Icewind Dale: Rime of the Frost Maiden Adventure that came out very recently. And it's interestingly enough, I hadn't really read this book when it came out. Obviously, I've got it as usual. And I will say, from reading like that sort of overview and the Welcome to the Far North introduction, I'm like, man, it's got lots of stuff like aliens in it and the thing. Why haven't I read it sooner? Because it's quite a horror adventure as well.
It is actually, and I only realised that with all the like sacrificing going on, and the sort of mystery. And as you said, like the bits about like the thing, and very much sort of taking from those sort of it's maybe not survival horror. Was it like exploration? I don't know what you call those horrors, but like Alien, as you said, those sort of, what would you call that? Is it a kind of genre like monster?
I think, well, maybe you feel like Predator or Alien or the thing where it's like the environment is much against you as this predator hunting
the predator
you.
itself, exactly. And you
Yeah,
sort of
exactly.
utilize it and yourself utilize the environment to help either survive from either in some respects, which kind of works, doesn't it? I guess.
And it's interesting because, again, we've not really covered adventures that deal with extreme climates or extreme environments.
Yeah.
And then there are people who live here in the 10 town settlement. So each of these 10 towns have people inside them. And it talks about, certainly in the beginning of this primer, it talks about like, how people survive and obviously, extreme weather and how would people deal with it. And running a campaign like that as well, which is interesting because, again, usually people just go, oh, you get there, you travel there. But each of these 10 towns has like the overground travel, like how long it would take you. And maybe if you're going to do random encounters, like how long could you last outside and all that sort of thing. So it's something to really consider if you were running this adventure, which I, again, maybe ignorantly hadn't thought about before, compared to when we're looking at, we're in a dungeon. Oh, there's horrible things there, and the dungeon's going to kill you. But you'll at least find a room that's empty at some point and you'll lock it.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's like the weather's against you. You have to get to the inn or one of the many inns that seem to be in these 10 towns.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of like, it seems to be like the 10 towns is 50% inns, 50% fishermen, and then
One
two
shop.
people that have turned up. Yeah, exactly. But no, you're right. And I think the only time we really came across it was, but then in a much more extreme way, was what we dealt with in the Travel Book Club, like when we're in Planescape, where you're dealing with sort of, howling winds that send you mad in Pandemonium, or Limbo, where you have to concentrate hard enough to make land become objects, become, this goopy soup become physical and all that sort of stuff. But this is, exactly. Like you've got hours or minutes or seconds or stuff like that. And travel is so critical. And to clarify as well, just for people who haven't read the Icewind Dale, that we are looking at this like 10 towns, but it's very much caught up in all points about the fact that there's an endless winter occurring at the moment. So it's kind of heightened in this variation, whilst it does actually have summertime and there are lakes, and it does get mild as much as Iceland or the northern parts of Norway get mild in the summer. It's just particularly now it's really critical to this adventure, the fact that all the lakes are frozen up and key ferries and transportation networks are closed down. So
Yeah,
it is sort of more prominent in this than it probably would be if it was just a 10 towns primer, where it would say in winter it's like this, but in summer you can walk, because there's a lot of pathways and walkways and, as I said, ferries between all of these places because of just the nature of it.
Well, that's interesting. I hadn't really considered that. Yeah, in the context of this adventure with Auril, her wrath across this whole region about making it ever winter, like
Donna Frozen,
Donna Frozen, evil Frozen. Maybe she did Frozen before Frozen. Who knows? No, she probably didn't. Frozen was ages ago.
Well, Frozen is based off the Ice Witch or whatever she's called.
Yes,
The Hans Christian Andersen story. Sort of
yes,
thing.
that's right. Yeah, the Snow Queen. I think it's
Snow Queen. Thank you.
There you go.
The Ice Witch. Same thing.
She's known as the Snow Queen, but to Hamilton, she's the Ice Witch.
The Ice Witch.
They're such best buddies.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Like, because one thing it doesn't maybe cover in here, it talks about like, oh well, the winter, it rarely gets too sunny or anything like that. But then, you know, in places that are far enough in the real world, she says, is that sometimes you just have days that do not have night at all, and maybe dealing with that as a hazard as well. Like, you don't know when to sleep properly. It disrupts sleep patterns if you're out and about. Like, I know in the Arctic, like, you know, you can have up to like 32-hour days and stuff like that, depending on where you are in the year. So that's
awful. I went to very high North Norway for a wedding in August, and it got not dark but dim at about 11 p.m. and then it was bright sunshine again by about 2:00 in the morning, and it was so fucking weird. It was cool for a wedding because, like, the wedding night, you're like, party. What time is it? Oh fuck, it's already 10, but it's still like bright sunshine.
Great. Because I can imagine you don't, and that could be a hazard in itself. Like, you don't know how long you're staying up for if you don't have any way to track the time. Because that's the thing. These things, like, you don't know how to track time accurately in these places.
Yes,
because often you're relying on the sun. And it's an interesting one. And again, just to clarify, because we'll maybe do a little bit of spoilers for this particular adventure, but also it is set just after the Crystal Shard, which we've not covered yet in our Drizzt sort of read through. There's definitely throughout the book you will sort of see, like, he pops up every so often or mentions of it there. So
it's pretty critical, actually. That's why I thought it was useful to do it, because the first book of the next trilogy of Drizzt is like prominent about like the interrelationships between all the cities, the fact that some of them hate each other, some of them are tied with one another, the sort of council that runs it. There's a big attack that happens at the beginning and how they sort of muster their army. And as it mentions in each of them, it tells you how many militia they can muster, because one of the critical elements of the 10 towns is the fact that it not only is the environment out to get them, there are hordes of barbarians that live up in the mountains and raid on a regular basis. There are orcs and other denizens of the wilderness.
Goliaths have introduced here.
Yeah, exactly. That all turn up and take over at some point even. So at one point in the Drizzt novel, we'll find the barbarians overrun the 10 towns and stuff like that. So
that's quite interesting, quite exciting. Yeah, like a monster attack or a group attack on these 10 towns, and like, how do we muster together? Because that's the thing I was wanted to mention straight off the bat, is that I do like, even though 10 towns, you're going to get 10 towns, I like, it doesn't necessarily say from what I saw that, like, here's what happens at a council, presumably because that will be very particular in the context of the adventure. But I love the idea that, again, something I've always loved is that each town, here's who the speaker is, here's the leader, and here's what they're like generally. And so you can imagine that all these sort of like different personalities, crashing and sort of like bashing off each other, at a big council meeting, because obviously they've got their agenda for what their town is. And like, one of the town speakers is mysteriously ill and doesn't come out for reasons. One of them has died recently, so there's going to have to be an election, all that sort of thing. And I like, majority of them, they do try to be different, even though, as we're joking here, but like 50% of these towns are inns, because why else would you go to these places? Because they're bloody cold and it's hard to fish, but I was very appreciative of, like, each of these towns, there's a reason for it to exist. Some of them more so than others. I will say that not all of them feel as fleshed out as they could be, but I can see like the big finale of like everyone coming together to fight against evil, especially if you've got a town of adventurers who have come to this place and they're like trying to unite the 10 towns and then come together. They've got their back. But then it talks about like later on, if like, because basically with this adventure is that you take like 3 or 4 of these sort of mini adventures, including the little starter adventure. And then any ones that you take, those towns will be very favorable towards you because you've helped them. Whereas the other towns are like, wait, these guys didn't help us. We didn't even know they existed, but they didn't help us. So, chuff them. We don't care about them. So I quite like that you could pick and choose your baby to them. Yeah. Yeah, proper council meeting goes. So what say you?
Just chuff them off.
It's like Duggan's whole representative. What do you think? I'll chuff them. Don't like them at all.
Just chuff them. Yeah, that is pretty much what the flavour you get when we get to some of the council meetings in the novels that we come to. I think what has always sort of annoyed me before we get into this about the 10 the 10 towns, and it's in the 10 towns overview, which is one of in the beginning of the primer it talks about it, and it says 10 towns started from humble beginnings. Immigrants from all over Faerûn came here in search of escape or adventure and built a modest trade post atop a hill where Bryn Shandus now stands. Now, if you look at a map of Faerûn, the 10 towns is at the northernmost point of this place, right?
Yeah.
It's all the way up in the middle of freaking nowhere, okay?
Yeah.
Who is trading with these people? Okay, who the heck is going to go through? Because you might think, well, it's on the coast. Yeah, it's on the coast. It's on the coast of moving ice, the most dangerous part of the sword coast, because it's literally Titanicosphere, and no one is going to sail up there. Are they bloody stupid? So who is trading with them? It really freaking annoys me, because I'm like, it's not if it was, the 10 towns, it's cold, but up north it's even colder, but there's people who live up there who need to trade with the south. Like, okay, where's warmer? Totally understand. Fireshire seems like maybe that's a trading post for the 10 towns between Luskan and 10 towns. But the 10 towns are freaking, no one's going, you know what, I need some fish. I'm really going to go all the way up into the bloody, they're not that nice. Okay, I know they say they are quite tasty, these knucklehead fish, which are kind of critical, but it really pissed me off.
But there's nothing else in terms of trade. The only thing I saw was the scrimshire like ivory things, which are basically like carving into ivory stuff, which seemed really cool. Don't get me wrong, I was like, that's really interesting. But like, there's nothing. Why would I go there?
I totally get that they would make stuff, they'd have fish, and they would take them down to Luskan and trade there, which can get Mirabar and Neverwinter. Makes all this sense, right? And people would come to Luskan, and Luskan's then got a really good port. Blah 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 blah. No one's going up to the bloody 10 towns. It's well, they do in the books, but it really pissed me off, because what it should say in my mind, if I was going to world build this, was there's in the mines, there's mithril or diamonds or gold, and
gold.
Sorry, Matt burying it up. I can't help it. I'm just stuck with it. Gold in 10 towns. That would make much more sense. And the fish, and then don't call it I just think calling it a trade post really sort of annoys me. But there you go. That's my Hamilton rant of the day.
That's a little rant about trading.
Little theme tune.
Well, it's just because, as you sort of mentioned, there's not much in terms of like high level magical items that you're going to get in a shop compared to maybe lower down. Because again, these things are very sparse. Like you said, there's lots of monsters. It's more rugged and wild out there. So there's a bit lawlessness out there. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter if you have a fight, with someone in town. You go out to an expedition. It's about your own safety. So it maybe feels a lot more selfish than anything. But I agree. Like I was a bit like, there's a couple of like shops and stuff like that, but clearly you'd need to go to the main like point where you go to, which was Bryn Shada, So I did think it was a bit interesting, because like ultimately it's like, well, why would you come here? And not unfortunately, but the answer would be like, you're doing this adventure, or you're trying to escape, because obviously a big thing is that like people are trying to outrun from their criminal past. They go, I know where I'll go. We'll go north. No one will follow us there.
Yeah, you don't go to a trade point. You go to somewhere where people do not trade. That's literally the fundamental of it. So it's not a trade point in my mind. But yes, exactly, you're right. It's people who like exiles, and it's like there's a place in the Warhammer world called the Border Princes, which is like on the border, and it's a similar sort of thing. It's like the West, the Wild West in America, or like other sort of like these sort of like outposts where people are on the edge of civilization. People will sort of let these sort of people like, okay, well, you go over there and you can. We can't bother to follow you to the 10 towns. And fine, you're going to have a horrible existence in this thing, I guess, is kind of the point. But it's that sort of feels a bit like that, but it's a bit Yeah, and you sort of make your life in a new world, but it's and then hence why Dritz sort of makes his way there to sort of feel like he feels sort of like can't find a home amongst the people in his own home, can't find a home anywhere else in Faerûn after 6 years of like being sort of rejected. That he ends up at the Towns and
Yeah.
fortunately finds somewhere where people will accept him and stuff like that, which is kind of great.
So my quick question to you, obviously we're not going to dive into them yet, but is there a town that like you would either choose straight away as your starting town or one that you would avoid completely? Because I think it's very revealing. It's almost like a personality test, I think.
Can I give you my joke answer?
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's like people will be like, "Why have you taken us in?"
Yes, yes.
And I think you can probably guess which it is. It's Dugan's Hole.
Yes. No, the thing is, so I thought that was a really interesting adventure, but there's just nothing fucking there. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. But honestly, I think it's Ken Deneville because Deneville was the one I thought was like interesting because it has this moody castle. It's got a really nice picture, which I liked, and I kind of think it epitomizes the 10 towns in quite a good way because it kind of deals with a ferry. It has a nice lake. It's not the big one, so if I was going to start somewhere, I'd maybe go here, even though it's not like the first on the route. And it has like this twin with Caer Konig, so you can sort of like link them a bit and sort of slowly move out. And it's got a kind of interesting, horrid history of like this castle being set up by the Cormorants. And they sort of the richos don't let the richos. Sorry,
because you're about to say poppos next, weren't you?
The poshos are like So there's the people, and they get attacked by orcs, and the people ask to come into the care, and the richos say no, and then finally they get sieged out
because there's no food for them. Yeah,
exactly, and it's sort of like a horrific sort of story and a sort of comeuppance against the richos, I guess. But it's kind of an interesting tale that tells exactly something for you to have a grisly old person sort of mention in the tavern and sort of say it's the tale of you should never abandon your people or something like that. And
absolutely.
it kind of, and that's what, and you could kind of make that a kind of theme of the place, like it's all about loyalty and togetherness and stuff like that, and maybe like the heart, and that could be an interesting, gives you a sort of theme. It felt like it had a theme. That was kind of why I liked it.
And that's the thing. I think I agree. Like when you look at a map of the 10 towns and see where they are situated, because I think sometimes it's really hard to be like, where are they all connected to each other? Like Bryn Shana is obviously the main one. That's the first one you probably would come to on any trail. I think their thing is called the Foaming Mugs, is their sort of where they go looking for like missing iron ingots and stuff like that. That's a fucking boring quest. Like whereas all the ones around it, so like you said, like the both Cairn ones, you have the Black Swords, which is about a cult of Levistus, which is really interesting, and then the Unseen, which is about the Duragar, which is a big point in the Icewind Dale story for this adventure. So it makes me sense. So in my head, I'm like, well, this has to be done. That one will have to. That makes more sense to get the players into what the story is. I actually quite like Duggan's whole one. The idea of like the two wolves, bad wolf, good wolf. That sort of like I'm trying to like convince. Basically, from what I read from the quick summary of it, is that it's like this big woolly mammoth who's a pet of a frost giant, and the frost giant has passed away due to some complication of like something attacking them. And so the wolves are like, well, cheer up our woolly mammoth by letting them kill humans. And you're like, great, I like that. There's like Lonely Wood. They have a white moose that's on the run, that's killing things. So again, that horror big ass sort of thing. Like there's little themes throughout these adventures. There's like a druid that is awakening creatures left, right, and center, which I thought was really interesting. Like the lake monster from Brenneman is also an awakened thing. I think that's the thing I liked, because these starting towns, it tells you what the town is, and then it's like, here's a quick summary of the starting adventure. So you could be like, okay, I could be any one of these. But I kind of wish they had like, hey, you're only going to play through like 3 or 4 of these. If you want to do a theme, here's the one with all the druid stuff in it. Here's the one of all the sort of cult stuff in it. Because currently it's just like, wherever you think the players want to go. And I'm like, that is fair. But sometimes, like you said, you're in Duggan's Hole and you're like, why the fuck are we here? Like, what? Like, you've got these secrets, like the players get secrets and character creation, so they're a bit more in depth with it. But I'm just like going like, you're in the arse end of nowhere. You're on like the spine of the world. Like it's freezing, it's cold. You must have a purpose for being in this town. That if you're not a part of 10 towns already, you're not a resident. Why the fuck are you here? And I feel like otherwise it just feels like you're just picking which ones you want to do, and then you can do 4 of them. I go, okay, now going outside 10 towns to do the actual story, and you're there like going, God, what if the druid line of like awaken these creatures, that is something to do with the overall story of Auril, like maybe that's something to do with it, and all the Duragars is a big point, big story point in this particular adventure as well. And they appear in the unseen, they appear somewhere else as well. I just was like, why can't we have that? Why can't we? Where's these sort of like choose these ones? As a starter pack. That's the one. The one thing I thought was missing a little bit, because I think it was just like you can figure it out, and I'm just there going like, now make it easy for me, because the players might be like, what? Why does this matter? And you're like, it was a random roll of a D10. Yeah.
My idea for it is that I think you could run it either as people like going to visit it as like the Lake District sort of thing.
God, amazing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Completely unprepared. They're just climbing these places in their fucking trainers. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I think that could be one way of doing it. I think also you could sort of like, I think you're right. Some structure would be really good. I always go back to Waterdeep Dragon Heist, but the bit I really like in that is how it tells you it gives you like that list of like, if you're playing the Castellantas, the final section for how you chase down the final encounter, it gives you different like routes to take, and it goes like
those 10 encounters and how and what order you should do them in.
And I think you're totally right. That is a really great idea to make something like that. Like, if you want to just do the druid path, or you want to do the weird monster path, or you want to just do like high level, you like exploration ideas or something like that, would be a really good way of doing it.
Like there's a couple of like the Cairn Deval that has like that's a big old castle fort which you've got to get people through. Like a number of the adventures have these maps of places.
I like that one because I just like the idea of the Knights of the Black Sword, or a secret society of cultists, and I was like, okay, I'm in for this. This sounds interesting.
Exactly. Well, again, and what I found interesting is that a couple of the towns will have like little plot hooks that go to these other towns as well. So maybe that's what it. Maybe I'm being too harsh about it, because it's like in Bremen there's like a lady who owns Buried Treasures, the inn, and she's like, oh, I'm trying my best, but my son, he came back all changed. I'm like, because he died. That's what I'm like.
No, it's because he got the crystal shard. He's got a piece of crystal shard, which is. In the crystal shard, I think is the crystal shard.
It's the thing.
So it makes you all go evil and demonically possessed. So
and then he's gone off to this particular castle, and then you go and
gone off with a bunch of tieflings and told I'm never coming home, and they're all like, what I like about it. It's like the kids got an emo face.
Yeah, like, oh my god,
oh my god, mom. No, I'm gonna go off with my cool tieflings, and we're gonna make a band. Like that's how
in this dingy castle in a different part of town. Yeah.
So for you, a similar question then. Which one would you choose if you were going to say like, I want to go here? Irrespective of the adventure, just the sort of place as well. Yeah.
Oh, well, so I really liked the Goodmead place, because that's the one with the election. So essentially somebody, and admittedly that is tied to the starting adventure, which I won't go into too much detail, but essentially the speaker died because there was an attack on the town, and the attacker took 3 of these big barrels of mead, and now there's like we have to get those mead back, because that's how Goodmead does so well, is that it gives alcohol to these other places and trades with them. And so now there's this election between 2 individuals, one of which is I want to say this, is it a Zentarum spy who's trying to keep an eye on stuff like that, and they're very aware that if they don't get it, they're going to be in big trouble. So if they don't get it, they trek 8 hours to another town and report, and then it says, and then comes back, and you're like going, God, what a miserable existence. They can't like send like a flying snake, which they all have, or a message. But it's interesting because there's a little bit of, I guess, it's only a tiny bit of the starting town, because essentially it takes a week for them to like organize and like who should it be, and so we've got the spy person who's like typically bold and brash, and I should be there. I've got new things for Goodmead. Make Goodmead great again. That sort of vibe to like get people around him. And then the other person is just like, God, I just have to stand up in opposition to this guy. I don't want to do it, but everyone seems to support me. And then they turn around and go, one of these adventurers could possibly be a good speaker. And you're just like going like, You've only just
No.
met them. They're just coming from the. Who votes for the strange person that's just coming out your door going like, I will find you me.
D&D adventurers. That's why. That's what
it
happens.
is. I mean, to be fair, it's not the worst thing in the world that they get elected because then they have a base perhaps, and good mead is a good trading place, and it has these connections once you get the mead back.
I wouldn't go for it though. I would let them interfere with it, maybe.
Yes.
Like maybe, that's how I would probably play it. Like give them secrets to find or something like that, or know that someone's actually like out for a bad reason to do it. I think the other thing that's kind of interesting about it, and why I thought you might even like this one a bit, is because of like the history in some respects being like it's kind of got this has an absolute rivalry with Duggan's Hole, and therefore it then has a shrine to the flaming sword, which is Tempest, the god of war, which is what Wolfgar shouts for Tempest all the time when you're playing Dark Alliance.
Yeah.
For Tempest, and all the and as a barbarian, they'll all shout. Trust me, in that book, you're going to hear full Tempest a lot in the books from now on. And with that, they had such a battle with their neighbors that the thing Redwaters is called Redwaters because it ran with blood, and you're like, dark.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I think Goodmead was interesting because it definitely obviously had connections to these other towns. Yeah. But again, I quite like sort of the murder mystery element of the unseen bit. So that's the Caer Konig, where it's like, we've had people break in, but we don't know what's happened. We only find these mysterious footprints in the snow. And the thing is, though, like obviously, it keeps saying in the book, it's Duergar. It's Duergar.
Yes, which is really boring. I totally agree. It's kind of
I'm just like, I feel like I get it. I guess maybe for people who have not played like Underdark Adventures or anything like that, you're not going to be like into like, Duergar. So maybe it's a bit more the mystery. We wouldn't get it straight away. But I did quite enjoy that. Like I did like, well, who could it be? It must be Like I like the idea. It goes, it's clearly somebody with magic, and then you finally go, oh shit, there's actually about to be an uprising of these Duergar coming from underground. Like it's you almost like you out of the pan into the fire, so like, oh no. So I quite like that sort of aspect of it, and like the idea of this big ferry that was stuck in the ice that you go and explore, almost like a haunted ship, and then there's like, you're like, someone was here, and of course they still are here. They've just gone up invisible. What the fuck's going on here? And I just thought, I thought that was quite fun as a sort of like, again, part of town. But what I will say is that a lot of the stuff that makes the town interesting, I do feel sometimes it's like, the stuff, like, again, starting adventures, whatever, they're outside of town. They're not necessarily within the town itself. And I know that it's like, it's just a starting off point. So that's why, again, when we talk about them, maybe a little bit more detail, is that each of these towns, majority of them has an inn, even though it might be closed. It's like, we always talk about the closed inn. Actually, I just thought it was just really interesting, is that these places, they live here, but they're not known for like one or two things. Like the mead one, I was like, okay, it's got mead there. Bryn Shanna, obviously that's where majority of people, that's where you can get to all the towns.
That's like the city in a sense. Yeah,
exactly. And so I just thought it was interesting, like the overview of it. I was like, oh, okay. And then as you sort of mentioned it, I did laugh a little bit at the word snowflake rating, because obviously for us now that means something completely different.
Yes.
So so each of these towns has like a free snowflake rating to help you differentiate them, because sometimes they could be all quite similar. So they're rated in terms of friendliness, the service it offers, and its comfort. And a quote here: "The more snowflakes, the better," which makes me laugh. So obviously, the more friendly snowflakes you have, then obviously it's like, oh, we're welcome here. Whereas others are like, no, unhelpful, go away. But I do feel like all the services, like, it's, there's lots of services. I'm like, what are they? Because again, each of these towns, when we go into them, they've got an overview, and then they have like 2 to 3 like big locations, and then depending on how important maybe they were to the initial story or to the overall adventure, they'll have a few more plot hook ones. Like I know I talked about there, like the like East Haven, for example, they have stuff about the town hall and about this sort of cauldron that you can go and find and all that sort of thing, and a bit more to work on. You're like, okay, well, sounds like East Haven is important to the overall plot. So I know I keep harping on about it, but like I like the idea of going, hey, if you really want them getting invested in this Rime of the Frost Maiden rubbish, here are the 4 towns that you need to get them to. How you get them to each one, it's up to you, but like each of them, because you have some sort of has some like sort of investment in it. And also, sorry, I forgot to mention, East Haven, they burn a red wizard of Thay right at the beginning, and you're just like, well, that's terrifying. I mean, it's a wizard, it's a a bad person, this red wizard of Thay, but you're just like going like, oh, they don't fuck around, do they?
It's a little bit Midsummer
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's got that kind of vibe. You could really ham up the sort of midsummerness of it, couldn't you? And like,
Yeah.
we've got the festival tonight, and like
Yes.
no one ever mentions what it is, and you're like, oh, lovely, we'll go to the bonfire night, and then suddenly like, what the fuck are they
Oh
doing?
no.
Shit, who is that?
And these sacrifices, so you kind of mentioned it, these sacrifices to Auril to like appease
Yeah.
her, make her like not cause any harm. So there's three kinds of like sacrifices. There's the humanoid one, which we're sort of mentioning, which both Bryn Shana, East Haven, and Targos do. They have lotteries to be like every, because at first I was like, is this every fucking day? And like, no, it's once every moon. So it's like full moon. So I was like, oh god, because otherwise it just dwindle down to like three people who go, no, not me.
There's only not that many in the city, is there? To be honest,
Some of these places have less than 100 people. They've also got food, so they'll give up like food for the night, or warmth for the night, which I thought, again, that's very folklore, where they go, like, we'll go without warmth and no fires will be lit and all that sort of thing. And I just, what you just said there, I think, yeah, you could really ham up how each of these things really impact on the community. Like there's a family goes, oh no, we didn't have time to, something happened, someone was injured, and we forgot that today is the festival, and so we don't have any food, and we've been out of food for several days. We need to eat today, otherwise they're gonna die, And I just think that what you said about like just really make it home that this is a place of survival and it's cruel.
just going off that, just they could have like, maybe this is how you get your folks up to 10 towns, right? Is you say the East Haven Winter Fair is coming for the first time in 100 years.
Ooh.
We are going to have this, that, and the other, and dancers from Luskan and the flame eaters of Baldur's Gate and all this stuff, all coming to East Haven here on this date, right? And so your adventuring party are like, this sounds freaking cool. Let's and you travel up to go see the thing. Maybe you get invited to be a part of the ceremonies or something.
True.
Like that.
Yeah, if you've got lots of bards in your party.
Exactly. Yeah, maybe a bard. Exactly, a bard. Totally how you get them in. Bards. There's a battle of bands or something like that, right?
Oh my god. Yeah. In the frozen north.
Yeah, exactly.
There's something. It's a little bit of a side scene. So in Minnesota, there's a guy who the lake near them freezes over, and they cut like a round like piece of ice, and they put like a motor on it, so it spins in the ice, and it's like covered in like trees and whatnot. So that's the same thing. You can battle the bards, but it's like a moving stage as you sort of go on and fight. Yeah, cool. Battle royale in the water and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when they go up there, then all the people that turn up for the thing just get put in cages, and then it's like,
who shall take it tonight?
Yeah, exactly. And then it's midsummer, and you're the sacrifices at the end of the, that's kind of the point, is in like because they've run out of people, they don't want to run out of people, so that's the kind of thing they sort of like put on this show. But really, when you get there, it's like, well, there's no fire eaters of Luskan here, and it's like, no, it's just, then there's 30 of you, and you're like, wait a minute.
Some sort of fucking Squid Game-esque type thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, now you are the...
It's a knucklehead trouts game. Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's a short-lived festival. Why did nobody go back? Oh, everyone died, literally. Just then to go into like the structure of it, so we sort of mentioned it before, but each town basically has a little bit about itself in a nutshell, how long it takes to get to these towns and other towns in it, some locations, and then the quest itself. Now, obviously, we've not read in detail each of the quests. Like I said, they mostly fall into categories of like monsters, mystery, things stolen. So there's a lot of bit of fetch quests, which are supposed to get you familiar with what the town is, and a couple of big NPCs. And I like the sort of nutshell thing, as you sort of mentioned, which sort of says like, does the snowflake rating, the population as well, roughly it goes between 50 people, which I believe is Duggan's Hollow, all the way up to Bryn Shana, which is like 1,200 I've got here. So even then, it's bloody tiny. Again, if you've it reminds me of when we've driven through towns in like sort of South Dakota, that they're just like, there's just less than 100 people there, and you're like, God. And so again, it's that thinking about really small-minded, like all they care about themselves is the selfishness because of the need to survive. Is that you have a very small community. They'll be very tight knit, but also they'll take their own priorities. So I just thought that was really interesting. That even then with Bryn Shana, it's not that many people living there. Well, how do you want to do this? Do you want to go through each of them in quick succession and see is there anything that pops out? And
I don't know. I feel like we've kind of talked about it in quite a fun way, but I think we could run through them all, I guess, as well. In addition, I think let's do that. It's probably the easiest way to go through it. Let me get back to the beginning.
Yeah, because we've not mentioned them all by name, to be fair. So like this, and these are all in the book. They're done alphabetical order. I also feel that they've done in sort of like maybe least boring to so then more interesting and then least boring again. I don't know. I think the ones in the middle I thought were more interesting. But the first one, alphabetical order, is Bremen, which was founded by dwarf prospectors on the west bank of Mar Dulan, on the mouth of this particular river. And again, it starts off with that whole thing about the harbour being frozen, and you can only cross the water, etc. And you can see other docks. You can see other towns from the dock on a clear day. So you can see Targos, Tourmaline. It's like there's the talk about search parties and this lake monster, that something is in the lake.
Yes.
That's the sort of main vibe there.
Yeah, and it's got and the places we talked about the Bergy Treasure, the 5 Tavern Centre is like, it kind of, as we're saying, it's like there's 5 brothers and they built a tavern. It's 5 guys.
It's 5 guys. I guess the 5 Tavern Centre, where there's just a square and then the different taverns, but they're all sort of a little bit dilapidated and stuff. I just kind of wish there was like something for each tavern.
Yeah,
just like, why would you
agree.
like, because they've got names, they've got Stones, Even Keel, the Rivermouth, the Grumpy Moose, and the Black Bearded Brother. I mean, tag yourself. I'm Grumpy Moose. Done. But what? The only reason, and the reason you go to these taverns would be to hear rumors and stuff like that, and maybe but I don't understand why you wouldn't, as a GM, be like, go to Buried Treasures because you get the most for your buck there, because obviously it's much more better rather than going like any of these 5 buckos. Like that. I think that's the only thing. I wish there was a little bit more about the 5 taverns, because
I agree, or at least it had like some sort of like every summer they have a games or something like that in the park in the centre where they
like a competition to see which is the best tavern, which is the best brother. Absolutely.
I like that.
Because I quite like the story about it. It's like the 5 brothers intended to build a tavern together, but each had assumed that they would be the one to run the business. I just thought that was great. They just were like, so congratulations to me. Wait, what? Like, there was no communication until like they signed the deed, and they're like, oh no, we're not having this, and then they all broke up. So I thought that was great. And that's it in Bremen.
That's really it. Yeah, no, you don't get a lot, do you? And then it comes on to Bryn Shander, which we've talked about a bit, which is the big one. The only thing that's like, this is the only one that's been built kind of cleverly, and hence why it's the biggest one, is it's on a hill, so it's not by the lake, so it doesn't gain the benefits of the lake in terms of like fishing and all those sorts of benefits, but it does have the a sort of river that runs a little bit past it in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But what it does have, to its credit, is this. Yeah, so being on a hill, it's then fortified and heavily fortified, and then because of that, it's become like the sort of center of the whole of the 10 towns, and is where, in the event of any sort of like trouble of any kind,
people can evacuate to here,
and everyone goes to there, which happens in the books as well. So and it's got a few more. It's got a few. It's not that many. I was expecting quite a lot more than what you get.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, at least, again, we've got the northern look, which is the sort of the tavern in this, and they have, I mean, a random sort of, I was gonna say a random reference to a Billy Bass, which I love.
Yes,
I think that's great. I also like that again, that the story of that, it ties into a secret that a character could have in a background, which I thought was just interesting as well. But the only 2 other places that I mentions is the Black Iron Blades, which is basically like a shop and a blacksmith's together, but which
is a bad blacksmith as well, which are kind of like, okay.
But if it's the only one around, there's no competition, that's what I thought was. But I like the idea that everyone's like, oh no, and they're carrying a black iron blade to boot. Terrible. It's like, what?
Exactly. And then there's the god of the sun, the shrine, which is also
the House of the Morning Lord, which again, I will never be able to pronounce the actual name of it. It's not Lythander in this one, because that's the god in the south. It's someone called Amanate.
A Maunator,
a god of the sun known to take both male and female forms. And what's interesting about that is that the priest there, Miss Shana, is like a good priest, but she gets really cross when you say it's the wrong one. So again, I can imagine that confusion. Go, oh, Lythander, and they go, no. And then there's like a little bit of detail about them and their flatmate, Copper Nopper Knocker. And you're just like going like,
that.
what's going on? But I wish there was more shrines. I think that's the thing. I think in
Yeah.
these like towns and stuff, it makes sense that you're going to be praying. Maybe there's more shrines to Auril, for example,
Yeah.
or even the stuff to Levistus a little bit more, but in plain sight. Because I feel
Yeah.
like this is the only one that's mentioned of like,
Very true.
you know, and just like how are you going to get blessing? This is probably the only place you can go, maybe to get resurrected or have greater restoration put on you, perhaps.
true.
You know. So that's the only thing I was thinking, is that it would be nice to have more of those, because it makes sense in those remote settlements. Like maybe you're like, oh, the gods have forsaken us, so what's the point? But I don't know. I feel like some people would turn to religion in these times. So
It feels like maybe they just go to drink. It's because that's why they've all got in.
maybe that's the new religion, isn't it?
The new religion. It's that classic scene in The Simpsons when they think the world's going to an end and everyone runs out of the church and everyone runs out of the tavern of Moe's, and they swap. So the people from the Moe's all run into the church and the people from the church run into the
Yes, yeah.
Moe's.
Amazing.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, but I mean, again, it's kind of weird. As I said, like it's the big one. It doesn't get a lot to it, while some of the other ones get more. And as you said, like it feels like the middle's the more interesting bit. And we move on to then Caer Dineval, which is the first one on Lac Dinashir, and is named after the Dinevs who came from Cormoran, as I mentioned. And it also has the town's residents are furious a ferry service has stopped, mainly because they have not received deliveries of mead, and so they're really annoyed.
I know that feeling. Yeah,
exactly. So it's critical to everything, and it mentions the Caer, and this is where that sort of like history came from, and where these black swords, the Knights of Black Swords, who are the cultists to Levistus, are all holed up. So it kind of makes it a little bit kind of moody and cool in its own way.
But again, like the two other things here, that's not the cairn per se. There is like the sort of Devon's Rest, which is just a boarded up inn, classic, and then the cairn itself, and then the Upwell Climb, which is the tavern where people go, oh well, the things are happening, but don't worry. Hey, there's no rooms here. It's all full. Go to the cairn and work it out. And the guy's a decent guy, the person that runs the tavern, but they clearly don't want to say anything about Levistus and scare people off. So like, why the adventures will sort them out. And you're like, what the fuck? But again, it just gets into that attitude of like, well, if I didn't see it, it's not my problem. So I can imagine when they go, you go, oh, I knew you'd be fine. You're adventurers. You've probably dealt with demons and devils before.
It's kind of interesting way of managing it, instead of the whole like, oh, don't go up to the Caer. It's kind of, instead of like sending you there, instead of like, oh, let's just hide this from the adventurers. These could be useful. Let's use the adventurers to fix our problem, sort of thing, which is kind of
And if it doesn't happen, then it's not my fault. I didn't send them there.
Yeah,
I suggested
exactly.
it. Yeah. And then the next cairn, as it were, the two cairns, they're on the same route to each other. Caer Conig. This one itself, it's on Kelvin's cairn. So cairns there.
Caer on the cairns?
Yeah, it's because it's by the mountainside as well, of the Moonseen region. So there's it's maybe a bit more sheltered than the wind, perhaps, because it felt like with the previous cairn, there was like a long, I don't want to say cliff wall, but it kind of felt like there's a big sort of wind tunnel or a corridor or something like that. Here it's a little bit more protected.
Sheltered.
Yeah, and here is the unseen sort of quest. So that's where the Duragar sort of come in. So you have like this sort of the big ferry sort of thing. I think some good tavern names here: Hook, Line, and Sinker.
I love that one. That's really cool
Because that has personality compared to the others. Like Buried Treasure, it's like, it's about I guess they're all about the proprietor in a sense. But the Hook, Line, and Sinker is like you come in and instantly have a beer in your hand for free, and then the line is like, oh well, I'll buy another one. It's really good beer. And then the Sinker is like, right, now we have a challenge at the end of the night. And I just like the idea that it's all a big distraction. Like there's don't worry about outside. Let's go and come on, let's have the competition. Let's we're merry in here. Don't worry about your problems. You just, again, that reliance on alcohol. It feels very real. I don't know.
It feels exactly like the sort of like, let's enjoy enjoy life whilst the rest of the world, but not in that sense. But let's ignore our problems and let's enjoy ourselves, and it kind of gives that sort of feel every night. Which is a lot more interesting than like the Northern Light, which has had its magic lantern stolen by one of the Duergar, which is a bit of like a dick move, but there you go. And particularly when they can see in the dark, but whatever.
It's like mine now. Yeah.
Exactly. And then you've got Frozen Fire Expeditions, which is like where you would go if you are on your tour, your tour of it, and go and get your adventuring gear, and then
the dog sleds
and stuff like that, and have some travels.
This particular town, though, it's right at the edge of like a very small place. Like you wouldn't come to this first. Like it feels like, God, it's like we're gonna trek 2 days, get past the cairn with all the Levistus cultists in that. Well, maybe we should stop this. No, we gotta go find our dog sled. Get all the way. Like it just feels like they've like capitalized on. There's no competition, so everyone has to go there for this particular expedition. I guess it's all the way up into the Kelvin's cairn itself. But I just feel like, why aren't there more like competing like expedition people to go? That it just feels like that was just
millets, outdoors.
Exactly. So I just thought that was really, again, I like the idea because you'd have like people that's running you through those different places, but maybe, I don't know, it just feels like there should be like a plot hook. There's the only reason why there's only this one in the town because the other ones have been taken off because there's been, I don't know, an increase in Yetis, or there's been more stuff with the Goliaths or something like that. And so people are afraid and have shut up shop because they're not making that much money or something like that. Because that's the only thing. I was just like, this is a really important, maybe vital thing to go out into the wilderness. Yeah. And it's at the end of like a teeny tiny, like you have to travel so far to get there.
But I guess that's the kind of point, because then you're about to hit wilderness, so it's like this is like when you go
when you go
to like Scotland and like a Pitlochry where you've been to as well, I think. And then there's a lot which is called the foothills of the Highlands, so there is filled with great outdoors and millets and all those things, because the point is you buy all your stuff there and then go off into the real Highlands
real, it's like adventure starts here. That's fair. Yeah, exactly. I do quite like in this particular canon, the speaker is this drunk dragonborn. Yeah, like, I'll save you, and then
just goes around beating up people drunk, or does things, doesn't know what he's doing, like wanders the town, doesn't know if he's saved it or not, and then wakes up and forgets.
He falls asleep like in the snow or on like an icy lake and goes and doesn't remember what he's done. You're like, God. It just felt like, how is this guy still in power?
This is guards though, isn't it?
It is guards. It absolutely is guards. Just like, oh, for goodness sake. But that's how you get the adventure, is that you're walking through the town and suddenly a pile of snow moves and goes, who goes there? And you're like, oh my God. It's just
on guard. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just the speaker going,
and then they fall over. They do the attack on guard and then they literally go blast out and start snoring. Yeah,
exactly that. Then we move on to, as you said, the best named one, obviously Duggan's Hole, the smallest and most insular of the 10 towns. Yeah. It instantly says, its residents aren't fond of visitors. No. And then it talks about this thing, which I don't know if I'd make a point about it, but it talks about inbreeding, which has caused its population to dwindle. And it kind of just keeps mentioning it. And I'm just there going like, I don't know if it's important to the plot to keep mentioning that.
But yeah, no, it does. It literally does the whole, like, oh, it's Norfolk jokes, kind of thing. No offense. I'm not saying that I totally agree with that. I'm just saying it's that kind of, like, level of, like, jokes from 20 years ago where it's like, oh, they're all a bit inbred here, which means they've all got, mutations and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think you could easily just say like it's just because of one of the big stones, or like maybe there's mines nearby, and it just so happens, I don't know if you want to go down the radiation route or something like that, but the magic here is distorted stuff, and so maybe they're a bit more resilient or whatever, but also maybe their appearance changes. But it's weird because it has no effect on the plot at all. Like there's a bit at the end, like in the quest itself, so this is the Two Wolves quest thing where you go rescue these teenagers and you find out like, again, one of them has like a piebald face, so there's got different patches of color, their ears are a bit dogged, etc. And then you go meet the mum and it says like, the mother's so grateful she married her older brother, and you're like, I don't think that was why would I ever care about that sort of weird? I just thought that was just unnecessarily. Like, I guess totally I understand why they would put it there, because obviously it's a small town, etc. Who comes here?
You could just infer it. That's the thing. You don't need to go into too much detail. You're totally right. The thing that I liked about it is ignoring that, is what it gave me the vibes of was a League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
It's called League of Gentlemen or whatever, because it had that vibe. It very much gave me the we don't like outsiders around here.
For local people.
Local, are you? We're for local people and stuff. So it gives me that real vibe. I also like the 20 Stones of Thrun, which are like their little mini version of Avebury / the stones, sort of standing stones, which is kind of interesting. But as you said, the quest in that was cool because of the big wolves, basically.
Nothing happens because of the stones at all, which again,
No.
maybe it's good to like keep it as a mystery sort of thing. Maybe it comes up later, but I'm just like, this is the only thing, the reason people would come here is maybe for the stones, and that's it. There's not even a tavern. There's not even a tavern here. So I'm like, what do we do
what
here?
Am I doing?
What do we here? Maybe I think the only thing I can think of is that like you're out on the red waters and you're I don't know, your ship sinks or so, you're trying to get somewhere and you think, and then you just wash up here. And so the locals are like, well, I guess we'll look after you until you're back on your feet. And that's the only thing I could think of, like you would come here for. Because like you'd hear rumors about like, oh, some people have gone missing in in Duggan's Hole. And you go, well, they're probably all cannibals because there's so few of them, or I don't know. Like again, it's that inferring of like, do I want to go there? But I think, like I said, like the stones, I think are really interesting. I just wish there was like something more about like maybe this got an influence. Maybe that's broadcasting the awaken spell even more. That's where the frost druid has done that sort of thing. I don't know. It's just especially because the adventure itself, like I said, the starting one is about this murder of the frost giant, and then you're facing off against a woolly mammoth. Very cool, very interesting, but it's like, but why? Why? Is it just location? It just so happens to be, well, maybe there's something about the town itself.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a hunting party that killed the frost giant from the town, and that's what it's wreaking its revenge on. I don't know. It's just completely random, but what it is.
I think a couple of these things happen throughout it where and we said it before, it just needs a little, it could just do with another layer of interconnectivity, for want of a better term.
Which again, completely optional because it depends on how long you go. I guess if you're running this adventure, how long you're going to be in the 10 towns for, right?
I haven't read the rest of the adventure, so I don't really know much about how much this affects, like how much really this overly affects how you would then move into the rest of it, and even if it's like a lot of these parts, you have all these in other ones, don't you, where it's like, well, you can go and do these little things, but really you might instead just decide to ignore all this bit and just keep running straight into the key campaign, depending on how your characters or players want to do it. Really, I guess.
Pretty much. Yeah, and then the latter half of these towns have a lot more to them.
Oh, they
feels
do.
Like it's, and I don't know. Maybe they're mentioned in the Crystal Shard book, or if they're more plot relevant.
I don't think any particularly. Actually, I think they all sort of come up in their own way, but really, it's Bryn Shander, Caer Konig because of its location to Kelvin's Cairn itself, and then Tourmaline is a big one. East Haven, I can't remember, but I remember those names more. I remember those, and Bremen I remembered more from it than any of the other ones I could remember when I came back to reading these.
Because East Haven, this is the one where we've got the cauldron thing, and again, as I said, they had the big sort of burning thing at the beginning, so it's quite an interesting, like, oh, here we are to begin with, sort of like we've started, and that's the second biggest place. There's 750 people here. Here it has the East Haven Ferry and the Wet Trout and the White Lady Inn, which has a seance happening in it.
Cool, right? Yeah.
Like, why aren't all the inns having like a little something happening in it? Because that's like a proper little adventure in itself, the White Lady Inn. Like, it's just like, oh, come, would you like to join the seance? And in my head, I'm like, well, yes, in the middle of the tundra. Absolutely, I want to do that.
It's kind of cool. And actually, even like I like the little, and I don't mean that because it actually happens, but even the thing about the ferry, because obviously the ferry's now like frozen over. And this is where we're going to find more Duergar like are hiding out in there. And if you go in there, if you find one of them, you fight this Der Sunblight, which is one of the sort of captain of this crew of people, sort of like leader. If you get him down to like, what does it say, to like very low on health, he then shrinks to the size of a mouse and runs through a rat hole. And that's quite cool.
The picture of it's really cute as well, because I was like going like, I don't think Duergar are that small, and I completely forgot that they can do like enlarge, reduce. So so that's quite. I like that. There's no shame in running away because Duergar will go, nope, I'm going to be teeny tiny and you can't catch me. I love that as a result. It's
really cool. And then you have the whole like more about, I think, the drag. I don't know much about the whole story of the outside, but you keep hearing about this.
It's something to do with a hag, I think. I can't
Right,
remember off
yeah.
the top. A hag. People have gone missing, and so you have to go to a hag's, like a cave of some sort. That's what it seems to be. And then in the cave itself, you find this cauldron of plenty, which can feed people. And this is the interesting thing again, because I'm like going like, once you get this cauldron, you bring it back to town. There's two ways you can go about it, where people start to hear about it and they start to like petition you to use it because obviously it will help people. And then I like that. I think that's really interesting. And then you've got these town hall capers. So there's like the cauldron caper and the Shardolin caper as well, which the Shardolin caper itself, that's to do with the overall story about these sort of these bits of sort of like I want to say obsidian like gemstones that have a dark magic, which is what the Duergar are after. So it's like if you didn't get the cauldron, something's still going to happen in East Haven at the town hall. Whereas the cauldron itself, there's a spy as the assistant from the Zentarum who sensibly sends off a winged snake to send this message rather than trek, I don't know, 8 hours there and 8 hours back to tell the leader what's going on. And then they steal this particular cauldron. So again, I think I like this adventure. It feels like it should be way higher, like in the sense of like, hey, here's a really good starting one because it gets you into the plot, and but it's nothing. I guess it's nothing to do with. Because we need the Zentarum, what the Zentarum are up to, or what the Duergar are up to, and then the awakened animals. Those are the sort of three big plots I seem to find. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think it's some interesting bits here.
Yeah, I didn't read many of the adventures, so I feel a bit like I missed out on it. But I just captured my over it. But yeah, no, it does sound very cool. And as you said, the whole burning of the wizard at the beginning, that's what captured me when I was going through it. I was like, what is on fire? Oh, it's a person.
It's a person.
It's a person. And it's kind of an interesting story, and it's got lots of, they're not tiny completely, like it's got like nice little maps and everything like that, so it's a cool, it definitely is like maybe it does say it later on, like, oh, you should have checked this out, hopefully, or if you haven't, you can hear about it from these people. But
well, what's interesting is that, like, again, it says it's very clear throughout is that, like, hey, just have a quick read through of the town stuff, and then when you get to it, then reread it with the adventure as well. And like when I say, like, I didn't read the adventures, all I read was like the summary and like maybe a little bits, and then I could see like those bits after the adventure. So that's the bits I sort of read around and have got the context from it. And I think even then, I'd say if you don't even have to read the actual adventure. If you just like going like if you're a person that's not going to use any of the maps, because the majority of these adventures from what I saw had maps, but then I'm like, I want to make it, it's supposed to be like a quick seed hook, before we get into the big adventure. So I think like overall you don't want to spend more than like 6 sessions or so before you get into because it's like the pre-adventure before, and now we're at a 10 towns, tutorial level, because you're supposed to be like level 1 when you get there, and then I think up to level 4 before you like leave, and go out onto the main Frost Maiden adventure. So I wonder if, like, again, like, what's the time limit that you would put ourselves on it? Because again, it doesn't matter really, because the players would like chuff about and like work out like role play and stuff like that. But so that's the thing. I was just like, some of these are really interesting, but then it's like you should do this and then nothing else, because then you're going on to the main plot. So you don't want to be pissing around in 10 towns too much. But again, I guess it's up to the GM, obviously, because obviously it's like, how important is 10 towns to the overall plot? It feels like it is quite important from the brief bit we heard about.
And also, I think it builds, like when in the other ones that do this, it builds the characters' like connection to this area, and therefore when something is like oral itself is sort of like taking it hostage in a way in this sense, or is it's coming under, like in Waterdeep Dragon Heist, the Castellantas are about to like murder a bunch of people at a party. It makes you feel a little bit more invested in the story, doesn't it? Really, I guess absolutely. That's the thing. Yeah. Then it's Goodmead, which is kind of cool. Its relationship to Chult. I like the fact that it's got carvings of dinosaurs and serpents all over it, which kind of just this little nod back to that area. But really what its focus is, surprise, surprise, is it's honeyed mead. And the town literally buzzes with the droning of bees. I really like. And this is the one we mentioned earlier as well about the election. The last speaker was skewered by this Furbeak marauder. And stolen the beer. No. And so you get the whole election thing that you talked about, and the Shrine of the Flaming Sword. It's interesting, the sort of like, it feels like this place becomes so much more important because the the mead is so big
You're
because
right.
the inns are so big. And it's kind of interesting how, like, as you said in the election, the two people that they've got, Olivessa was interesting because of like the fact that she doesn't want to be it. And I feel like you could get involved in, as we were saying, like when you were talking about it, I was saying, like, I think what would be more fun is, well, for how I play it is like get the party to either like try and convince her or try and find someone else or try and find out about this Zentarum and be more mischievous in it than actually just become part of it. I think would be kind of interesting.
Because the wine stuff reminds me of the wizarding wine stuff from Curse of Strahd, and exactly what you said, that all the towns rely on it and they go, well, we've not had any shipments, and then you go and it's been like ransacked, or there's a big sort of standoff between Baba Lysander's like sort of dryadic like druid stuff against the wizards of wine. So that's the thing I remember. It's again goes back to like, yes, people just want to forget. People that need this stuff. So I think if you've played through Curse of Strahd and had that same sort of feeling where how important this was, the same thing here, but I think on a smaller scale, but also more intense, because these people are getting cross because they've not had their mead delivery.
Mead, exactly, and it's affecting the whole of the 10 towns, really.
Then we've got Lonelywood next, which is sort of one of the oldest sort of towns as well. Quiet town of loggers, fishers, and scrimshaners. So again, going into the bones, stuff like that.
These are the meanest people, isn't it? Really,
I believe so. Yeah. The Happy Scrimshana is the shop I was thinking of, which I just thought, again, I just like the idea that, what do you want? Get out of here. It's just like, here's my crafts. It's like a rubbish Etsy store where people, they're like, yeah, fuck off, take your stuff and leave.
Well, I like how she doesn't talk about a shady past except to speak fondly of people she once knew who have since died. So I just like how she just this, like, I'd make it more like, oh yeah, it's a bit like Andrew, and he died by being like, his head was ripped off literally by a giant. And then you say something else and go, oh, what's this lovely little trinket? Oh, that was Cyril's. Yeah, she died by being pushed off a mountain. And just like literally every tale is just that bit, and I just kind of like, or like, oh yeah, what a great swordsman. Apart from that time he got his head lopped up, like that kind of.
I like that. That's a much better way of putting it. Yeah, she doesn't. She only, like she says, she talks about people what she once knew, but they've died. Oh, they're dead. Yeah, I quite like that.
Make it really happy-go-lucky, but everyone dies. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think that's great. Then let's just talk about this place like the Lucky Liar. That's the main tavern, and then the other one called Ramshackle is the closed one.
Yeah, a bit dark, that one.
Yeah, it's very dark, that one. So the retired person hung himself in the common room, and you're like, okay, I guess so.
No content warning before you get to that, and then it's like staged to conceal his murder as well, so from some old friends, and you're like, well, there's a story there, but it was like, okay, and then you get the white moose in this, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, there's a whole town of murder in Lonelywood. Maybe there's something about the actual naming of it, Targos, I pulled up penultimate one there. Again, it's like Brinshana. It's circled by a wall of some sort. This one's quite big as well. Oh, sorry, I was wrong before about the East Haven. This is the second biggest. It's 1,000 people here.
Oh, it is, yeah.
But again, they're also sacrificing humanoids to, or else maybe less
people.
They do have the people for it. That's fine. Got the Luskan Arms.
Yeah, which I quite liked. And it's got this sort of old historic Luskan at its height of the pirate kings and queens, which I think is kind of cool. And just but it's kind of now infested with rats and all that sort of stuff, which is it's kind of interesting. And then you've got the 3 flags sailing. So, which is where all the fishers come, which doesn't really.
It's just another tavern. It's just for food and stuff like that. But again, you get maybe a different vibe of like people not willing to talk to you here, but maybe if you can sneak in and you overhear something about the seas or what's out on the water, maybe more about this knuckle-headed trout stuff, perhaps. Yeah,
you could sort of focus more on the fishing aspect here because it's actually got a port which is walled, so it kind of feels like the more higher end, sort of version of the shipping lanes, and it's so close. It's probably the closest one to Bryn Shander. It is only just down the road, and on this Lake of Mare Dualan. So maybe you could sort of make that sort of your second location to go to if you're going to go on the sort of route line.
And then there's a shop as well, the Tree Ligo.
The scarecrow-like man, which I always like. I thought it was a good description.
It's a great description. watching this. It's quite creepy sounding.
You
isn't
just
it?
can imagine it though immediately, can't you? So it's like,
But again, it just says, oh, the only thing it doesn't sell is fishing equipment because everyone's got their own because they can make their own. And I'm like, that makes
that
sense.
tracks. Yeah, that tracks.
All right, and then the final one we've got is Turlemaine. This
Yes.
the Kalashite sort of settlers who appreciated beauty. So it's this place I thought was interesting. It said like it's widely regarded as the most picturesque town in Icewind Dale. And I was like, could you imagine that you're just there going like, well, if I die, at least I've died in the most beautiful place in the whole sort of tundra. Like you just have these beautiful like paintings. Maybe there's an art gallery randomly, and then you just say, "Oh, this is nice." And then that lady comes back, and goes, "I know someone who died there." Like it's pointing out all the locations where they've been murdered or been frozen to death or something.
Yeah, no, exactly. I and it's kind of it kind of goes back, doesn't it, to that idea of like, oh, let's do a travel round and see stuff, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So let's go see the prettiest one.
This is definitely a seaside town. So like if you've ever been like down to Cornwall or Devon, whereas again, not much here, but you can stay here. There's like the East Tide area essentially, which is like an innkeep sort of like big place with lots of tunnels underneath, so you don't necessarily have to go outside, and along with the blue clam, which is the inn here. So yeah, I feel like here makes more sense to be like, it's so picturesque and it's beautiful, but there's not like shops or anything like that. You go, oh, we're just here for the vibes, and oh, it's so nice to be here, you know, that sort of thing. And then their sort of like main thing is a mine, sort of like a dungeon delving, but like we're gonna clear out the monsters, which is close by. But I wish they had more about like, why are the gems are so pretty here? Is there a gem market? Is there like a way they like what is it here that, you know, are they taken from here and then go to Brinshana? Like what's the main vibe here? Just a little bit more detail, I think.
Totally agree. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? That feels like when I was saying about like the trade thing, this is what feels like is the reason for having people come here, because there is, you know, the beautiful mine makes so much more sense than anything else. But there you go.
That's a whistle-stop tour through the 10 towns. I've enjoyed it. Like, again, I'd be interested to read the bigger adventure at some point, although not when I'm freezing cold.
Yeah, let's do it in the summer when when that 1 week where it's boiling in England.
Yeah, absolutely. Hamilton, very quickly, where can we find you, my friend? What are you up to? All the usual stuff.
My main focus, as I said last time, is the Kickstarter, which is I don't know when this will be out, but it'll be running in February, so maybe this will be around then. But yeah, it's called Wraithborn. It is a grim folk fantasy setting for Morkborg and OSR games, sort of things. And
own theme tune now.
And I've made a theme tune. I wrote the theme tune. I sang the theme tune. My gosh, that's an old reference. But and I've just been making more art for it, and it's coming along. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I've just had there might be a little announcement coming soon. I've got something kind of cool maybe happening with it as a stretch goal potentially, which could be really cool. That's about it really.
Nice.
But we've been on long travels.
Yeah.
And you know what? We've gone so far into the wilderness. I just don't know where I am.
I love that. So yeah, the 11th town is called Where What Am I Rolling, which is a twice monthly tabletop RPG one-shot podcast, which we do lots of different RPGs and interviews with game designers. Come check us out with lots of different systems, which probably use wintry settings as well. So you can go check those out. We've also got Too Long Didn't Read as well, where we do some twice a week streams where we read about an RPG and see what we like about it and all that sort of things. So come check us out there as well. All on the social medias as well. Yeah. So go check them out. You can find all the stuff in the show notes for both myself and Hamilton. There you go. All right, let's get out of here. Let's go to warmer climes next time. Yeah,
yes.
let's get out of this cold tundra.
Jolt or something. Yeah,
Jolt. That'd be nice. Yeah. All right, thanks so much for listening, folks, and we will see you
on the flip side.
Bye.